welcome back. Man, you may remember one of our guests from back a ways wrote a book. It was called The Girls of Haviland. Well, today we are going to take you beyond Haviland. We have a wonderful author ready to talk to you about a wonderful book. My name is Vin Dacquino. Her name is Deborah Rafferty Oswald. What a pleasure.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Last time I saw you, we were drinking wine together.
Yes, we were. Yes, we were.
You were at a book signing at a liquor store.
Yes.
And the place was packed. The word is out. Your new book is out, and it's wonderful. But let's catch the audience up. Who are you? What do you do? When did you start writing? Talk to me.
Okay. I grew up in Mayapack.
Great place.
Yes. Got a lot of ideas then. Have lived in Brewster since 1991. Been writing since I'm about 9 years old.
Wow.
Yes. And I'm a teacher with the North Salem School District.
And you teach
fifth grade. Yes, yes. Daily inspiration from my students. And I took this is pre-internet, I took a correspondence course in the mid-90s about writing for children, and I was asked what my passion was. What did I...
Yeah, that's what this show's all about, people and their passion.
What was my passion? And I said history. And at the time, I had an infant, so I had an infant and a toddler, so my travel was restricted where I could really do my research, so I just did it in my backyard. I went to the Brewster Public Library, pulled up archival issues of newspapers on microfilm, and have been getting my inspiration through newspapers ever since.
So Haviland is based on?
The Drew Seminary for Girls on Seminary Hill Road,
which is actually Carmel, right?
In Carmel, New York,
Wow.
yes. I was, through the Putnam County historian, I was able to access report cards, class rosters, guidebooks. Some of the rules were very silly, to our modern ears. And I said, what better place to stage teenage drama than in a girls' school?
Girls' school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. There it is, the Girls of Haviland.
Yes.
And now, so good response. People liked that book very much, and you decided that what you were going to do is go beyond Haviland.
Yes.
How does the second book differ from the first?
Well, I'm always looking for contemporary issues that resonate with today's teens. So even though the books are set 100 years ago in Carmel, Brewster, Mayapack, and Manhattan, I always want to grab my reader's attention. So I thought in the second book, I could explore hazing.
Whoa.
What
Very frightening.
Yeah, what students go through to get into sororities and fraternities.
I went through a horrible hazing.
Yes.
I was pledging for a fraternity.
Yes.
In college. They beat us to death with those stupid paddles and the stupid things they made us do. When I look back and say, I say to myself, what a jerk. I can't believe I let them do those things.
Yes.
But that is what it is. So in this book, was there hazing back then? I mean,
well, I took a little bit of liberty because it takes place in a high school, but from stories that like my youngest daughter was telling me, this has been going on for a while.
Yeah.
So I took some of the things she told me about, and I put it in the book because I think it's been going on for all eternity, and I wanted to explore that. I also wanted to explore the opioid crisis that is gripping our country today with our young people.
Another scary thing.
And I did a little research, and I found out that opioid abuse, again, was going on, especially among women at the time. So
really?
I have a character that struggles with opioid addiction. So I try to couch the story, make it contemporary, and still I found out that Putnam County, following World War I, the county as a whole was struggling with shortages They hadn't had a coal delivery in like almost a year.
Wow.
There was no sugar, so they were really struggling as a county. And people, so I like to marry the history of the time with issues that
What
teens
year
grapple.
was this again?
This starts in September 1919 and goes through February of 1920.
Wow.
So I always keep it about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's where the newspapers give me the weather. They tell me what was going on in world politics,
Yeah.
as well as local
Yeah.
issues.
You're lucky. When I was doing, and I'm still doing, Sybil Luddington, I'm dealing with 1777.
Yes, that-
And it's like, oh my God,
That's
things that we
hard.
have are dust.
Yes.
You know, and very difficult. So at least, some of those things are there. And they kept pretty good records. I've been in and out of that Putnam County Historian's
too.
office, a million times. So, and they're so good there.
They're amazing.
They have so much wonderful information, and that's important. So you based a lot of your book on actual events,
Correct.
but the storyline itself is not real.
Correct.
So it's like, I love to tell this story about the little boy who came to me and said, Mr. Dacquino, how can I write an exciting story if my life is boring? And I said, listen, don't take the facts and write the story strictly from the facts. You can write about what is, but you have to write about what if.
Yes.
And take the real things and run with it. Well, no one does that better than you.
Thank you.
You're very good at it. Even though all of this is 100 years ago, it's today.
That's what I'm hoping
Yeah,
for.
and
Yes.
and that's what makes it good. You're a wonderful writer.
Thank you.
And I like the fact that you continued the same setting. We've got the same general idea. So this is, I guess it is a sequel, but it's also a story in itself. It's a new story with the same characters in place. So it isn't exactly a continuation, but it is. I laugh because I work with writers all the time, and it's always fun to see them finish a book
Yes.
and be absolutely haunted by the characters. They can't put them away.
You
Those
can't.
characters live inside your head.
They do.
And you find that
All
happens.
the time.
Yeah, it's like you're writing another book.
Yes.
It's not your choice anymore.
It is not my choice.
They become living beings.
And they tell me what they want to do.
What they want to do.
Yes.
And then they begin writing. That is, when I work with writers, I call it the zone.
Oh, yes.
And I said, listen, you are not a writer unless you've been in the zone. And they go into what?
Yes.
And I said, the zone.
Yes.
When your characters start writing the story and you're just sitting back and going, oh, wow.
Exactly.
You're just as surprised as your readers are going to be when you get to that part because they are writing the story for you. That's being in the zone. Once a writer is there, you're a writer.
And you don't want to leave the zone.
You'll never want to leave because you've been there.
Yes.
And when you've been in that state of mind where the book writes itself, it's wonderful. I used to sit down after dinner and start writing, and my wife would tap me on the shoulder and say, aren't you going to take a shower before you go to work?
Because it
And I
doesn't
look and I
matter.
say,
Yeah.
I've been sitting here for 12 hours.
Yes.
And I could easily do that because the characters just go. My favorite time was when I was writing a book about, I even forget what book it was. The character was out and he was into trouble because he was drinking. And he got into trouble. It was for the senior ball. So he came home and the dog he grew up with as a little kid died.
Ugh.
And his body was still on the bed when he got home. It had just happened. And I'm sitting there, the tears are
Yes.
going down my... I had no idea what was going to happen. No idea. I was writing the scene. He's coming home and facing his parents for the first time. He had just got caught drinking. Father had to go pick him up at school Comes home and the mother's on the porch crying. And he said, I didn't mean to upset you. She says, shh, Shadow died.
Ugh.
And he went running into the room and there was Shadow. And I was like, wiped. I had to take a break. That's when you know you're in the zone.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful feeling. And that's always been my complaint with school. We teach English to children. Actually, we teach children English and literature, and we give them 43 minutes to get in the zone.
And it's not enough time.
Ain't gonna happen.
No.
It's just not gonna happen.
Yes.
So it's very difficult. That's why I used to have this thing called Peanut Butter and Jelly Writing
Yes.
Academy after school, where the kids could sit for 2 hours and write. Unless you give yourself the time to get in there, it's just not going to happen. So we have these kids saying, I hate poetry. I hate writing. But we're really not giving them the opportunity to experience writing. So when did it happen for you? 8 years old?
9 years old, I started drawing. I've always liked drawing and painting.
Oh, that's good.
Then I started giving I didn't know they were characters at the time, but the people that I drew, I started giving them names, then birthdays, then families, then
Yep.
addresses, and before I knew it,
And they're people.
they came to life.
Yeah.
And I can still recite their names after all these years. I actually had a family, and I just started writing about them. And then whenever I had a school assignment, I found I could do the same thing. The people just became real. And when you talk about the zone, I spent this past August, I knew I teach, so I knew I was
Yeah.
I had to be back by Labor Day, and I knew I had to finish this because I had some beta readers who were expecting the book on September 1st.
Wow.
And I was outside, because that's how I get in the zone, outside. I had a fan on me, I had 2 dogs, and a large glass of water, and I just, it's a feeling like
I know.
nothing else.
I know.
I just, and I discovered that at 9
Debbie,
years
when
old.
do you write? Do you write nights, mornings, weekends?
I write during summer vacation.
Oh,
That's when
wow.
that's when I write, and I will, I'll do the research. Like I'm doing the research
Yeah.
now for the 3rd and last book, and it's going to be a trilogy. I do the research usually in the winter, and then the minute I get out of school at the end of June, I just sit down again on my
Yeah.
makeshift office on the deck, and I just write.
Yeah. I had a crazy way of writing. I did write while I was teaching. And I would go to bed about 9 o'clock. Then I'd get up about 11:30, 12 o'clock, write for a couple hours, and go back to sleep.
Oof.
And what I found is that for me was quality time. And the phone didn't ring, no one came, and I still do that today. When I'm writing, that's my favorite time to do it. Some of my friends are like, did you send me an email at 3 o'clock
in the morning?
I said, yeah, that's when I'm up, So it's a good time for
Yes.
me. I tell writers, find your profile. Who are you as a writer? Where do you write? When do you write? How long do you write? So do you have elongated periods that you write? When you're zoning, you zone for a while?
Oh yes, because I have to finish it. I have to.
Yeah.
I have to find out. I don't know what's
haunts
going to
you?
happen. I don't know what's going to happen. So I have to find out what happened to these characters, or else I can't sleep. And the beta readers, friends of mine who read it, they could tell. They were like, "I know you were in the zone here, and at this point, I think you got up and left the room because it took you a while to get back into it."
Yep.
And there's one particular scene where the protagonist is swimming across Lake Lenita as part of a hazing.
Wow.
And the feeling of just like I could hear her struggling in the water. I could see her,
I
trying
love
to
when that
breathe.
happens.
I could
You're
feel
there.
her muscle aches. And she was just being propelled by some force. She was looking at the Putnam County Courthouse, and she knew if she got there, she would survive. And that was an example of just being in the zone, and the people who read it said that they could pick that up.
Yeah.
Because the character was driving the story.
Yeah, boy, I can't stress that enough. Don't say you're a writer unless you've been in the zone, unless you know what it's like to sit there and be so engrossed in the story that you just can't leave.
You don't even know what
You're there.
time it is.
You know, I said to someone, a kid again, said to me, how do you know you're a writer? And I said, when you are so into it that you are amazed at being the first reader of the book.
Yes.
And that's what I love most about being a writer. I'm the first one to read it. And not write it, read it.
Yes.
Because I don't know where it's going. I mean, writers work differently. I've worked with writers who write a complete detailed outline before they write the book. Others have a very good sense of who the characters are, but not where they are. Others know exactly where they are, like you talk about Lake Oneida. These are real places.
Yes.
That's what I do. My settings are almost always real. In Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye, if you follow the directions in the book that the family takes, you'll end up at what used to be my our little summer cabin in Hawkinsville, New York, all the way upstate, in the middle of near Old Forge, New York. And you could follow it. I need to see where my characters are.
Yes.
Some people, just the opposite. A very good friend of mine, Roberta Silman, is just the opposite. Her characters have to be real. She bases her characters on real people. She sees real faces when they do it. So writers are different. And the more you write, the more you will know who you are as a writer. That's why I say, talkers talk, writers write.
Yes.
The more you write, the more you're going to know who you are as a writer, and the more you're going to be able to zone into that book and to get in there. And when you become it, then you're inside your characters. Your characters aren't characters, they're people.
They
You
are.
give birth to those characters. And I could see that in your characters. So now, tell me a little bit about Beyond Haviland. Can you cheat a little bit and give us a little bit of a synopsis without giving away the story?
Sure. I was inspired by two articles in, I believe, the Putnam County Courier from September 1919. And one was of an 18-year-old girl, I think her name was Edith Moody, who escaped from the Bedford Women's Reformatory and sought shelter at a home. And it grabbed me because it's the name of a friend of mine. The last name was Outhouse, and that was her name. And I
like
guess
Outhouse Orchards?
That's exactly of the same,
wow.
yes. And I guess there was a distant relative who lived in Jefferson Valley. So the girl who escaped from the reformatory sought shelter at the home, and the homeowner woke up the next morning to find her gone along with $500 worth of their merchandise. And I was like, aha. So I was like,
There's a story.
There's a story. There's a story. So I was like, what would drive someone to end up in a reformatory at 18, and why did she steal, and what were her motives? At the same time, I believe in the same newspaper, there was an article that there was a post-war surge in enrollment at Drew Seminary for girls. I assumed maybe people were a little bit more at ease, that they were no longer at war and they would send their daughters back to school. And it said that there was not adequate housing. So some of the girls were going to be staying at the home of the Mrs. Reed, it said. So I was like, let's take that and let's make it the most horrific, awful, miserable living conditions you possibly could have the misfortune of staying in. So I have them in a leaky attic, crawling with mice on old moldy mattresses pulled out from, God knows when, 12 girls in the attic. And I was like, let's put the protagonist and her friend Florence in that environment and see what happens. So they're no longer in the beautiful dormitory. They're in this attic, and let's see where it goes from there. I then brought the article in about the girl who escaped the reformatory and put her in that attic as well.
Wow, cool.
So Jay wakes up to like this lump under the bed next to her, and I just make this, I name the character Olive, the most moody, secretive, irritable, mysterious character I could think of. And I knew I had to back that up with a really good storyline, a really good background. Yeah. So that's when I introduced the hazing. Jay pledges a sorority, gets into all sorts of trouble. And we find out the reason why Olive ended up in jail at a young age. There was a good reason for her stealing. And at the end, there's a plot twist that I don't think anybody's going to see coming. And the feedback from the beta readers were like, what? Oh my goodness, I never... There's another storyline, there's a parallel storyline that Jay gets involved in fighting unfair labor practices.
Oh boy.
Especially for women and immigrants and children. And she does work with then Governor Al Smith and his political advisor, who I named Ruth Lefkowitz. She's based on his real political advisor, Belle Moskowitz. And I did some research at New York Public Library on some of the reform movements and some of the leaders. So I have Jay go back to Manhattan and work for this worthy cause. And at the end, it all gets tied
That's
up.
funny. I write young adult novels also, but I also write nonfiction. And I do Sybil Ludington, and I did The Hauntings of the Hudson River. And people say to me, boy, don't you wish you were just doing the fiction instead of the nonfiction? This way you wouldn't have to do any research.
That's all the fun.
We both know that's wrong.
The fun.
Because fiction takes research too.
Yes.
Sometimes some of my fiction took more research than my nonfiction. Because you have to know what's happening. And you have to know, especially with you, when you're basing it on historical events, even though it's fiction, you have to know what you're talking about. And if, for example, if the kid's going to swim across Lake Glenida, you have to know Lake Glenida.
Yes.
You have to know the lake, and you have to know what's around it. And then on top of it, you have to know that lake from
1919.
1919.
Yes.
I was going to say 1819. So it is important to do research in fiction and nonfiction.
Yes.
So you found yourself spending a lot of time at the libraries and the historian's office. You put it all together. You worked on the what is and you worked on the what if.
Yes.
So this Beyond Haviland is done.
Yes.
It's circulating. It's out there. It's available. What? Beyond Haviland?
This should be the last because
right.
I'm actually taking her out of New York and sending her down to Key West, Florida.
Oh, really?
And I found a short story I wrote in 1994. It was handwritten.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that I kept it because it has so many observations that I've since forgotten. I mean, like I talk about what Key West smelled like, what it looked like, what it sounded like. So I'm taking that short story and combining it with, I found historical newspapers from Miami that mention Key West, and again, still Putnam, and I'm marrying the two.
I am about to blow readers' minds with a brand new book on Sybil Ludington that'll be coming out April 1st.
Can't wait.
And a lot of it is based on, you ready? Letters written all the way back in 1854, family letters. The colonel's grandson, not only did he write to all of these family members, but he saved every letter.
Oh, that's
every
like
letter.
gold.
And he annotated it. Even wrote from Aunt Laura Eustace to... This guy was amazing. And he saved every bit of it. I tell writers, don't throw anything away.
Right.
You never know. I do the same thing. I use little stories from when I was in high school.
Yes.
And I incorporate them into
That's
my
what
books.
I'm doing with the third.
That's so very important. So you already hit it around my big question. First of all, we've got about a minute and a half left.
Sure.
Final words for your audience.
If you like adventure, if you like dealing with things that are happening now in a historical setting, and I think if you like surprises, I think you're going to like this one, because this one's got...
wonderful. So this one's got a wonderful surprise in it. Let me read it to you. No, just kidding. Debbie, as usual, it is such a treat to have you here. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep writing. A teacher
Yes.
who writes is worth her weight in gold.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because children need to have a wonderful model and example to follow. That's you. Keep doing what you're doing. Let the kids know how wonderful writing can really be. And reading. Readers are leaders. Writers are fighters, fighting for the right to be heard. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being part of the show. And come back again and again. And whatever you do, read these books. They're wonderful.
Thank you.
Hopefully they're in the libraries all around
They are.
here.
They are.
Again, do what you do. Debbie, thank you for being part of it. You, as usual, were a terrific guest.
Thank you.